Hey everyone, welcome to ScreenGeeks Radio Video. We're figuring out what this is still. This is Dave.
This is Barry. Welcome to the Screen Geeks channel, whatever this is.
Yeah, exactly. On the YouTubes or the Twitches or the Facebooks, wherever you see it. We're happy to see you. Well, we don't see you. Wow, this riffing thing, I suck at it. It's all good.
You're good. It's weird for me too. I'm staring at a green dot, and it's like I see your face, but I'm looking at a green. I'm trying to like emotionally engage the green dot, but this is stupid because it's you. But if I'm looking at you, then it looks like I'm not looking at you. It's weird.
Yeah. So my camera is right here, but you are right here. Like I moved the window around so it doesn't look quite so bad if I'm looking at you, but I'm still not looking at the camera. I don't know. We're doing our best here,
I'm
folks.
not making good eye line. If this is like Will Smith doing Men in Black and we're like looking at like, the green X to like that's where the alien is, we would be fired off this movie. So it's like we are not Bob Hoskins and Roger Rabbit caliber right now.
Yeah. Can you tell we're trying to recover a little bit from the deep philosophical discussion and dissertation that was last week's episode on A Hidden Life, which was a blast. Our thanks again to Walter Chow for joining us. But what are we talking about this week, sir?
This week, well, I don't know that it's any less profound. It's just a very different film, very different filmmaker. We're talking about David Lynch's 1999 film, A Straight Story. This is his only G-rated film to date, not to mention a film that was distributed by the Walt Disney Company. In fact, it's currently available on Disney+. Who would have thought a G-rated David Lynch movie would ever appear on Disney+, let alone on the Disney Channel? But that is the weird world we live in. But who does weird better than David Lynch?
This is very true. Let's go ahead and roll the trailer, and then we'll come back and talk about it more, because I was confused about this movie at the beginning.
Okay.
Rose, darling, I'm going to go back on the road, and I've got to make this trip on my own. I've got to go see Lyle. I know you understand.
Alvin, you're going to get blown right off the road. That's what I'm afraid.
Mount Zion, Wisconsin? Why didn't you just take your car?
I don't have a driver's license.
That's 60 more miles of hills. That's across the Mississippi.
I'm having a little engine trouble.
I'd be happy to drive you the rest of the way to Mount Zion.
I still want to finish this the way I started. And this trip is a hard swallow for my pride. I just hope I'm not too late. You've got two brothers that haven't spoken in 10 years. I want to make peace. I want to sit with him, look up at the stars, like we used to do so long ago. Brothers and brother.
So, for somehow, in my mind, I thought that The Straight Story happened earlier in Lynch's career. Like, he's starting out, he's trying to get that cachet before he starts doing the really back crap insane stuff. So he does The Elephant Man, and then he does The Straight Story, and then he moves into, who David Lynch is, doing Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive and everything else. And then I look at his IMDb, and I'm like, wait, he did this how far into his career?
Yeah.
Why would he even do this? And the story's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a strange choice and wonderfully atypical. I mean, it came out of nowhere. Not only everything about this film just felt like this really bizarre about face, because he had done Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which was despised and hated and loathed. It was a box office flop. It was really seen as like his, now it's a cult film, and I love that movie. But, in 1992, it was seen as like, well, Lynch is just like, even to quote Quentin Tarantino, he said that David Lynch has climbed up basically his own butt. That was Tarantino's take on the movie. So he follows up that with Lost Highway in 1997, which is a great movie. But as you've indicated, it's one of these movies like his follow-up films like Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, where it follows a linear narrative for about 30 minutes, and then it just falls down the rabbit hole. And, what exactly it means and how it ends up, it really kind of depends on you as the viewer. His movies are like Rorschach tests. They're so abstract and surreal and strange. But yeah, so Fire Walk with Me, and then the Lost Highway, 1997, and then The Straight Story. And after Straight Story, by the way, 2 years later, he has Mulholland Drive, which was originally a TV pilot, and then it became a movie. So, yeah, it is this beautiful, strange little fallen star. It doesn't seem to make any sense that Lynch would find Alvin Straight, his story, all that fascinating, let alone this would be something of interest to him. He's very generous in that respect. He's directed material that didn't come from him. Of course, he makes it completely his own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is a true story. And as you know as well as I do, the actor Richard Farnsworth, he basically traveled on the same path that Alvin Straight did during the making of this movie. I mean, it's a very loving recreation of what this geriatric did. I guess people listening to this don't know the story. Alvin Straight is very advanced in his years. He had been in and out of seeing doctors. It wasn't looking very good. He lives with his daughter, who has a very unique sort of disability and a very sad backstory. Alvin Straight finds out that his brother is also ailing. So Straight, who does not have a driver's license, decides he has to see his brother. So he gets on a John Deere tractor and travels hundreds of miles across the country on this tractor to see his brother. That's basically the premise of the movie. This really happened. And Lynch made it into this film, and like most of his movies, it's a masterpiece, I think.
I really think it is too. I think it's interesting kind of doing this on the heels of A Hidden Life, because much like it is with Malick's film, A Hidden Life is a very linearly told story. It's a very long film, but you know exactly what's happening and have a progression of the storyline. And Lynch's stuff can be a bit disjointed as well. A lot of people love him for that very fact. And this, again, is a very linearly told story that is very compelling. It shouldn't be compelling to hear about an old dude riding his riding lawnmower 600 miles or whatever it was to go see his ailing brother. Yeah. But I think it really shows how talented Lynch is, that he made that story so stinking compelling.
And he makes it his own too. I mean, it is a David Lynch film. It's paced like a David Lynch film. It's not, obviously it's not horrifying like his movies are. It's rated G, although let's be very specific about this. It's not a children's film.
No.
Most kids would be bored to tears with this film. It's not an offensive movie, but there's really not much here that they would find interesting unless they're one of those weird kids like me that liked art films and was addicted to Legal Eagles at the age of 7. Again, I was a weird kid. Still a weird kid, but
a little bit.
There's a little bit. Well, but there's the fact that it should just be PG, but they gave it a G rating. The rating doesn't matter except that it's such an anomaly, like everything else about this movie. This is Richard Farnsworth, who most people know as Matthew Cuthbert from Anne of Green Gables, but he had a long career, always playing a cowboy. He's got, he passed away not long after this movie came out. Passed away is a nice way of putting it. He took his life.
He had terminal cancer, didn't he?
Terminal cancer, and he decided he was not going to so he shot himself. He was a cowboy through and through, and a gifted character actor, and he did so much. There are movies that he starred in. There are movies where he was second billed or third billed, but it had a long body of work behind him. And this movie is kind of like a summation of his work. It's like this beautiful movie about this cowboy, about this man who, it could not be more analog. And he's not a cowboy on his horse. He's a cowboy on his tractor traveling across America.
No, it's not a tractor. It's a riding lawnmower.
Excuse me. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's a riding lawnmower. Do they say it goes no faster than 10 miles an hour, I think?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and we meet, and he meets all these people on the way. It's these different vignettes. It's a very episodic movie, and some of the vignettes are very in line with Lynch's work. Some of them are very strange. But
the audio just cuts out at certain points where you have to crank the audio just to hear what they're saying because it's such a wide shot from so far out.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's incredibly compelling. So at the beginning, Sissy Spacek plays his daughter.
Yes.
And let's just say the alarm klaxons were sounding. I'm like, oh no, she has a developmental disorder. How is this going to go? Because in the 90s, let's just be honest, the 90s didn't treat disabilities with the most respect.
Yeah, or now, really.
Fair point.
And not to disagree with you, because you're right. This is not that far removed from the movie that the Farrelly brothers made called The Ringer, which is pretty appalling. Not to mention movies that if it's somebody with disability, they're usually magical people with disabilities, or it's treated as just like an offensive joke. And you're right.
But that's not the case here.
Not the case, exactly. Spacek is exquisite in this movie. Who doesn't love Sissy Spacek? But she is really something else in this movie. I was telling my wife, and this is not a rabbit trail. I promise. This does correlate.
It's our show. Of course, we're going to rabbit trail. Are you kidding me?
Well, just so you know, like what the heck is he talking about? I took a bus trip in 1997 from Colorado to Kansas to visit a friend of mine, and I sat next to this young lady who was roughly my age, beautiful. She looked like Jessica Lange, like a young Jessica Lange. She was my seatmate because it was a 2-day trip, and and we got to know each other. It was really cool. My seatmate had this way of talking that I'd never heard before and I'd never heard since, and it's the way that Sissy Spacek speaks in this movie. It's that affectation where she'll be in mid-sentence and she'll kind of, she'll just kind of stop and her mouth will kind of raise for a second, and then she'll be able to continue with it. And I did not ask my friend, what's up? Because, it's none of my business. I was just getting to know my friend. And I haven't seen her, by the way, since that trip, which is why I'm calling her my friend. I can't remember her name. The point being, I saw this film. There was a preview screening. I suspect Walter Chow was at that screening, as well as Robert Dennerstein and Christian Toto and all the rest of our buddies. And I remember just sitting there, not only did I find the movie just transfixing, but I thought, my God, I've never, that's the way that girl talked that I met a couple years earlier. And I'd never seen another movie, and the movie never addresses exactly what's up with Spacek's character, which I thought was a great choice. They do establish, without giving anything away, she has a really heartbreaking backstory.
Yes.
And I thought Lynch visualized that in a really simple and poetic way. It really endeared the character to me. I love that character, and I love that she is not only the guardian of this old man, but she's also his best friend, and she's the one who understands him. She enables him in some ways, but she's also trying to rein him in, and he's impossible because he's absurdly stubborn.
Yeah, the film is just thoroughly tender all the way through the running time. And no, not as much as they are. I mean, the most by far is with Sissy Spacek's character. It's very clear that she's being very intentional about how she's portraying this person, and that Lynch really wants to be respectful of this person's journey and their her life experiences, without being exploitive is probably the best way to put it. That put in less deft hands, that character would have been a train wreck.
Yeah, and you're right to bring this up, because not only is Spacek brilliant, but he's been accused of this sort of thing before. Right before this movie, his prior film, Lost Highway, it's the last movie that Richard Pryor ever appeared in. And Pryor, was very advanced in, I believe it was MS that he had. He's in a wheelchair for the film. And some people some people criticize Lynch, saying, you put him in there for exploitive reasons, right? Because this is not Lost Highway is not a comedy, and Pryor was not playing a comedic role. So there's almost like this exploitive quality to have him just kind of just sitting around in some scenes. And I don't think The Straight Story is really addressing that necessarily.
No.
But Lynch has been accused of that. I mean, he has put, individuals, just because they look interesting or they are interesting, just kind of in the backgrounds of some scenes. He's, it goes all the way back to Eraserhead and on to Blue Velvet.
Absolutely. What I find, in a way, this is kind of like the thinking man's Forrest Gump in a way. Like who cares about if anyone's famous or anything like that? But it's about this character, this man who he is. There's nothing great. There's nothing bad. There's nothing good. He's just him. And he's going and meeting all these people. One of the most striking things is that the young hitchhiker who he meets, the first person he meets, it's, what you got to eat? Wieners. Who says that word anymore? And it's very much a person of a certain generation. But it kind of takes her, takes her back a little bit. And then they have these very nice moments where he's giving this friendly advice of just listen to an old man for a minute. He's kind of taking advantage of the fact that he is her senior by quite a bit, and that she is to have respect and listen a little bit, and imparts the little bit of wisdom he has. He's not talking down. It's just, this is kind of how I've seen things in my many years walking this earth. And it's just, tender is really the word that I would use to describe every single interaction in this film. Yeah.
You're right. There's an innocence to this movie because the character is, he comes from a certain generation. As you've indicated, because it being 2020, we look at a movie like this and we go like, it's kind of weird that this young teenager is sitting alone in front of a campfire with an old man. But the thing is, he's of a generation where it's automatically he's a father figure, and this is, and she looks to him that way. It's just like there is a lack of cynicism in this movie. That certainly was atypical for 1999. I mean, 1999 was the year of Fight Club and American Beauty. I mean, there was a lot of, there's some amazing movies that came out the year, but
Yeah.
a particularly nihilistic year for movies. Some very nasty, edgy, cynical movies. And in many cases, that was a great thing about them. I certainly love that quality about Fight Club. But, the straight story there's a beauty to this film. And again, to use that word innocence to it, that it's not only typical of everything that came out that year, it was very typical of anything Lynch had done at that point and since.
Yeah, the fact that this came from Lynch is really kind of a bit of a miracle. Like, because you bring up the cynicism. I mean, it's not like Lynch is known for making really happy movies. And it just really struck me how earnest this film is all the way through. It takes itself very seriously. Hello, Charlotte.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry. Do you need to take her out for a minute?
Do you mind? Yeah.
No. Let me pause this real quick, folks. We'll be right back. And we're back. So I'm not super familiar with Lynch's filmography just because it's a little too nihilistic for my tastes. I know that's a nice way to put it.
No.
Do the things that come up in the straight story resurface again later in his filmography, or is this kind of a rare stop along with The Elephant Man?
That's the thing about this movie that I do love. It does look and feel like a David Lynch film. It does have the themes that are consistent with his work. We talk about an auteur, a filmmaker, auteur, the word meaning author, an auteur filmmaker who you could watch their movie for 5 minutes and you go, oh, this is a Tim Burton movie. This is a Michael Bay movie. This is a Hitchcock film. The filmmakers who have such a distinct style. Lynch is like that. There are bits of, just to talk about his career for a bit. He was an artist first and then a filmmaker. A very abstract artist, a guy who just dealt with very disturbing material, but also with the notion of family. Family is a big theme for this guy. He started off with this movie, Eraserhead. It took him years to finish Eraserhead. That was his big art project. Of all people, it showed at midnight screenings, and it became a blockbuster. It became one of those movies like Rocky Horror. And Mel Brooks was a big fan of Eraserhead. Mel Brooks. And he said he met Lynch, and he thought, I love the way he puts it. Mel Brooks said, he was like Jimmy Stewart from Mars. Brooks
That's
said,
kind of amazing.
Because he said, he saw Eraserhead, and he figured whoever made that movie must be like this freaking weirdo. But he said, he met Lynch, and he was like a suit and tie guy, and it was real square. So we hired him to make The Elephant Man, which, as you know, is in black and white, came out in 1980, and it's a beautiful film. It's a heartbreaking movie, but it's beautiful. And it does have these surreal moments, and it's, at times it's like all of Lynch's films. At times it's beautiful and horrifying. Sometimes in the same scene, he always loves to mix the beautiful. But the notion of what family is, and also what American life is like, or something that goes through all of his movies. And from Elephant Man, which was a big hit, it was up for all these Oscars, including Best Picture. He made Dune. He was one of the many directors who were offered Dune. He finally went with it. And, Dune is interesting because it is a David Lynch film. It is a weirdo art movie with a $40 million budget back when $40 million was something. And it had an all-star cast. It was Kyle MacLachlan's first movie. MacLachlan was this guy who never did anything and from Snoqualmie. And Lynch pulled him into his fold, made him the star of this big thing, and in a cast that included Sting and Dean Stockwell and Brad Dourif, this huge epic, and it was a gigantic flop. Universal Studios wanted to make it the Star Wars of the 80s. They had action figures. There's still Dune coloring books and lunch boxes around here somewhere. But Dune was a disaster, and not entirely an artistic disaster, but mostly a disaster. So Lynch went back to basics. He made this film Blue Velvet about the evil that's under the surface in American life, how Norman Rockwell pictures are all basically a lie. And it starred MacLachlan. It stars brilliant Isabella Rossellini, as well as Laura Dern. And then, of course, it's the movie that of all things, that Dennis Hopper made after he got sober. As we know, Hopper had a really tough decade or so around the time of after Easy Rider, and then well into the time of Apocalypse Now. But yeah, Hopper had a really bad couple of years that he did not remember. So apparently Blue Velvet like after he had gone sober, he does this movie Blue Velvet where he plays a guy who is addicted to all sorts of things. He played a monster. One of the most frightening. The character that Hopper plays in that movie, his name is Frank Booth. It's one of the great villains of cinema. He's terrifying in that movie. But anyway, Blue Velvet is considered the greatest movie of the 80s. I don't completely disagree with that. I think it's a great choice, and it's a masterpiece. And Blue Velvet, of course, led to Twin Peaks, one of the greatest TV shows of all time. You and I dealt with Twin Peaks on prior ScreenGeeks episodes. I think it's one of the greatest things ever. Twin Peaks led to the movie Wild at Heart, which is what you're talking about. I mean, the nihilism in Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart is a comedy in some sense. It's a love story in other senses, but it is horrifyingly violent. It is grotesque at times. It's very, very challenging in some ways. But yeah, like between, Wild at Heart and then the movie, the prequel, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which was Spies when it came out, and then Lost Highway, which is a very divisive movie. Lynch, as you've indicated, Lynch makes movies where he makes movies that they're not horror movies, but they play like them. The imagery is jolting and terrifying and sickening and frightening, but the movies are sometimes also really beautiful at the same time. He's constantly painting his frame like an artist. He's constantly adding textures and these little details. And then this movie comes along, and it's like, what are you doing, man? But like it played at the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, this film was critically acclaimed, one of the most beloved films of its year. It's certainly one of the most beloved and acclaimed movies that Lynch has ever done. It's one of the few Lynch movies everyone can agree about, which is great. It is like The Elephant Man. It's like love it or hate it, everybody adores this movie at some level, as they should, because it's great.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising the talent they got, like getting Harry Dean Stanton, spoiler alert, but for the ending, it's like he's in the film for 90 seconds maybe.
Right.
But it's
Stanton loved Lynch. Stanton was also in Wild at Heart, and he's also in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So I think those are the only. He might be an Inland Empire. Stanton did a bunch of films with Lynch, and apparently they really liked each other. But you're right. I mean, it is funny that I'm sure he was on the set for a day. It's a small role, but what an important role, a pivotal role. And I love his scene with Richard Farnsworth. I love that scene between the two of them.
Yeah, but I mean, I love the fact that it's just like when you think Harry Dean Stanton, you don't think G-rated movie.
No, not at all. I'm sure it's probably, other than Disney's One Magic Christmas, those are probably like the two Stanton movies that are ever shown on the Disney Channel, really, that I can think of. And Everett McGill from Twin Peaks, he played the werewolf in Silver Bullet. Spoiler: Everett McGill is in this movie. He plays the guy who sells Alvin Strait his mode of transportation. Yeah, it's a great cast. It's a small cast. It's a little film. It doesn't take long to watch. It's a slow movie. That was always the thing. Whenever I'd recommend this movie, because it is slow. It's about a guy who is old. He has slowed down. He travels across the world in this slow means of transportation. So the movie kind of puts you in his headspace. It's like the movie is slow because he's slow. He's old, and everything is an adjustment for this guy. And I think it works. But I think some people would get really antsy with this movie.
I can see that. I would say it's very deliberate in its pacing. There's a reason for everything that happens in this film. And I think it's beautiful for that fact, because sometimes you just need to, like right now, we've got the pandemic going. Sometimes you don't need to have another Fast and Furious movie to keep you entertained and keep you going and sometimes you just need something that's kind of meditative and maybe doesn't ask like such tough questions as a Malick film might. But it just kind of lets you enjoy this journey for what it is. Like there's no great grand underpinning of commentary about humanity. It's a man's story. And it does have something to say about it just in that way, but it's not trying to make a grandiose statement necessarily. It's just telling a very simple story in its own time.
Yeah, there's a scene where Alvin Strait, played by Richard Farnsworth, he sits at a bar with a guy like him who's a war veteran. And it's interesting because, it's this really beautifully written, acted scene, like most scenes in this movie, of these two individuals, not only catching up with where they are in their life, but also, kind of going through where they are with their trauma from the war. But anyway, the movie isn't political at all. Most of Lynch's films are not political. I love that it's a movie about the heartland in a really beautiful and pure way. It doesn't politicize it. This is not about red hats or blue hats or anything like that. It's simply about people who are simpler, but in a way that's very ingrained with their with their town and their upbringing. It is talking about the greatest generation in a way that's not over the top reverential, but at the same time saying like there's something to be learned from people who have experienced so much that we'll never know. I don't know, like movies about elderly people. Like to go with this is a very obvious example, so forgive me for shooting so low, but like Grumpy Old Man is a stupid movie, okay? Grumpy Old Man it's condescending. And look, I love Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. I know we all do, but like that movie, like it doesn't really respect elderly people. And I think like Cocoon is kind of somewhere in the middle, because Cocoon is also very condescending and corny. There are some good stuff in there, but really, I mean, it's about, old people becoming young again and how great that is. And this is a movie about a guy, Alvin Straight he's aware that he's at the end of his life. And the only mission that he has left, he has to see his brother. He has to get on this thing that goes 10 miles an hour and travel across the country. And it's crazy, but you're rooting for him. It's actually a very suspenseful film at times.
Absolutely. Yeah. It also harkens back to a time that I think we could use right now of people looking out for each other.
Yes.
That's a through line of the entire film. Am I right? Are there Farley brothers in this movie? Like Chris Farley brothers? They played the twins?
That's a terrific observation, Dave. Yeah, good eye. His brother, I think Kevin Farley,
Yeah, I think so.
His brother, I could just pull it up on my phone. I believe it's Chris Farley's brother is in this. He plays a supporting role, a very funny role, by the way. There
are lots of really just charming little bits in this film, and if you're willing to be patient with it, and it's not the runtime isn't ridiculously long.
No, it's pretty tight.
Yeah, it's like 87 minutes or something like that.
Yeah,
it's nice and short, but I think it's a thoroughly good watch. It's kind of I think we talked a little bit during our live stream. I was bringing up how I think Hulu is going to be the new touchstone for Disney since they own Hulu outright. This feels more like a film that would show up on Hulu than it would on Disney Plus. However, the rating plays in its favor, and so I'm really hoping people will discover this film. Not looking for the zany Disney comedies from the 60s and 70s, because that's a lot of what the live action stuff is on Disney Plus. But this is a true gem to be unearthed.
I completely agree with you, Dave. When I heard that it was going to pop up, that it was going to premiere on Disney Plus, I wrote an article about it. If you go to MauiTime.com, I read a column called Barry's Streaming Cinema, and I did an article on this film, and it was a chance to revisit the movie. I hadn't seen it since 1999, and I just fell in love with it a second time. I couldn't agree with you more. It sticks out like a big old sore thumb on Disney Plus. It's like, what is this doing here? What is this? Disney had when it played in theaters, it barely made any money. It's just like it's not a movie that's either audiences go out and seek it or they don't. Yeah. It's a hard movie to persuade. Like even the trailer for it, which is lovely, but it didn't really. It's a weird premise, and it's a movie that older people will enjoy, maybe more than younger people. But if you're a fan of David Lynch's work, I mean, it's essential. It's a puzzle piece that you need to connect with all the others. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things about it. I mean, it's so weird that Lynch made this G-rated Disney movie, and I think it's wonderful too because somehow it has this platform on Disney Plus. So whether people love it or hate it, they have access to it. They can actually see it, and it's one of the best things on Disney Plus right now. I mean, I know we're all busy going through The Bride of Boogedy and Frozen 2 and all that, but I love that this art movie, it's a risk-taking art movie, is there, and I hope people will find it and give it a shot because it's one of David Lynch's best movies. It is. And
don't forget, there's the new Maleficent movie on there on Disney Plus now too.
I will stump to the end of time for the first one. I love the 2014 Maleficent. That was as you remember, that was one of my favorite films of the year. I love that movie. Did not like the sequel at all. I thought did not have any purpose of being, was not compelling. It's just one of those sequels where it's just man, they're really trying to find a way to justify this and they just can't. Yeah.
Fair enough. There's one more point. This literally just occurred to me. This may be one of the most quintessential films that came after Walt's death that I think Walt, I know he's a problematic character, especially as more and more comes out, especially around McCarthyism and everything else. But I think this film would have resonated greatly with Walt, and just that heartland feel, and just getting back to that simpler time, because that's what a lot of like Disneyland was about, and a lot of what a lot of those earlier live action things was just, let's get back to that simpler time, and just take our time, and take care of each other, and take the time to stop and smell the roses. I really think that might have played into why the film was put out by Disney, because it fits in with that beautifully.
I completely agree with you. At a different time, maybe Alvin Straight would have been played by Fess Parker.
Oh, totally.
Can you see that movie?
I kind of want to see that. Oh, that makes me sad that we'll never get that
Parker
movie.
on a John Deere.
Yes, especially like on the Davy Crockett special features. Leonard Maltin does an interview with Fess out at his vineyard as he's an older man, and that is
Yeah.
Oh,
he would have been a great Alvin Straight. Yeah, no, he would have. But yeah, no, I think that's a great observation, Dave. I completely agree with you. It's this was the same year that Disney released their animated Tarzan film.
Okay.
And this is in the same year as Toy Story 2, by the way. So this is before Disney acquired Pixar, and obviously this is before they acquired everything. We're now living in a world where it's like Coca-Cola. It's like they own everything. But yeah, this is it's an interesting time for the company, because they were still making traditionally animated movies, even though there was a lot of computer generated assist. And then you have this thing. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Like I think Walt would have loved this movie, and it does play with like some of the nicer, little gentler movies that Disney put out in their heyday. People, movies like Follow Me Boys,
yes.
some of their like, the movies that no one talks about because, there's no Shaggy Dog, there's no Flubber. But Disney did put out like some like really gentle movies in its day.
Pollyanna.
Exactly right. Yeah, you could definitely. I can imagine, the Disney Channel showing this and Pollyanna on the same block. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd rather watch the Straight Story. And by the way, to your point, John and Kevin Farley, you're absolutely right. The Farley brothers are in this movie. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, I know we're a little bit short today, but I kind of feel like we've covered things pretty well. Do you?
Yeah. I'm glad you got to see this movie. I think it's cool that this inspired you to see this film, because I love it, and I hope other people will check it out too.
Well, so when we covered The Elephant Man way back in the day, 10 years ago, the first thing you said was like, "Have you seen The Straight Story?" I'm like, "No." You need to see this movie. And I tried to find it, and it was just a pain to get a hold of, so I never got around to it. And I was like, "Oh, this is coming to Disney Plus. Hey, we're starting the podcast. Let's cover it." Like, this is a very much like that just that synchronicity of time and opportunity worked out, and I'm very thankful that I did. Like, I appreciate your recommendation here. And we're back to back pretty solemn, somber films. We're gonna get to goofy stuff, I promise, folks. But just A Hidden Life, it's. I wanted to talk about it, and I should have talked about this during the episode, but like the film essentially got unceremoniously dumped, like, which is very odd. I mean, it played in Denver for a couple weeks, but then it was pretty much gone, and then like the Blu-ray hit right as the pandemic started in March, like started in full swing. And so you can't buy the thing anywhere. I don't know if it's due to production or distribution or who knows what. Like, at this point, I just sprung for the Voodoo cut, and I'll pick up the Criterion whenever it eventually comes out. And this is just a great way to start catching up on stuff that I've been meaning to watch since we recorded last. Yeah, no, there's a lot to say there, and I'll say quickly that with A Hidden Life, it's a great point to bring up. I think Fox Searchlight did a very good job of pushing this movie. The posters were everywhere. I feel like it's not so much that the awareness wasn't there. It's just that it was competing with Star Wars and Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle 2. Like, it was, there were all, and 1917 as well. Like, there's and Jojo Rabbit. Like, there are other war movies out there, so to speak. There's A Hidden Life isn't really a war movie, but it's because it's set during World War II. It's kind of put in there. I think it's one of those situations where it got buried with the competition, and also to be really unkind, because Fox had been purchased by Disney at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't think they really believed in it. I don't think they really gave it the real aggressive push that they needed to. I don't think they knew what to do with it. Fox, the last movie that they put out, the last movie, I should say, rather, that Fox actually had out in theaters, that was made by them,
And it was like the last movie they made that was, truly a 20th Century Fox movie was a Ford versus Ferrari, which was a blockbuster, a huge
Yeah.
hit.
Oh yeah.
And but at that point, Disney owned the company. They didn't really push that movie that hard. The audience responded so enthusiastically for that movie. That movie was like a surprise blockbuster. But Jojo Rabbit and A Hidden Life, they both really floundered. A Hidden Life especially so. I mean, it's not so much that it didn't get up for any Academy Awards. That's a bummer. It's just that the thing just kind of came and went.
Yeah.
I got a buddy who lives in Antarctica. He works at McMurdo Station in Antarctica. His name is Ben Bonnet. He lives part-time in Colorado and part-time in Antarctica. He's a remarkable friend. I've known him for a while. Ben told me he got to see A Hidden Life, and he said, how is this not the best picture of the year? How is it that people aren't talking about it? How is it not up for these Oscars? And I said, I love it too, but, for a lot of people, it's going to feel like broccoli, and people would rather have an ice cream cone.
Absolutely. And full disclosure, I'm going to pull the curtain back just a little bit. We're recording this episode directly after we did the Hidden Life episode. We're trying to bank a couple episodes so that we can post stuff every week. So if we need to take a week off, we can. So that's why we're bringing it back up a week later. So just so y'all know, we won't be doing this on a regular basis.
The same shirt as the last episode.
I changed my shirt.
Dave very cleverly changed his shirt. I forgot, so that's why I'm wearing the same Buckaroo Banzai shirt. So there you go.
I'm wearing the same undershirt, but I just changed the outer shirt. It's faster, and you don't have to be exposed to my whiteness.
If I hadn't said anything, no one would have known. Well, you would have totally pulled that off, and people would just been like, "Oh, Barry thinks he's Simon Cowell." So
yeah, because we're full of pretense and wanting to really pretend that we really got our act together. We totally don't. This is just for continuity, so hey, there is something a little different. I did change a shirt. That's really about it. I don't know what we're doing next. Haven't really talked about what film we're going to talk about next. We're kicking a lot of ideas around. We should have the next live stream date nailed down pretty soon.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could we talk about Jamin Winans' film The Frame? Would that be cool?
Yeah, I think we can.
Do you want to wait, or I'd like to talk about it?
Let's absolutely talk about it, because I think we have two very different opinions on it, and I think it's always more interesting when we have different opinions about a film. Let's tackle that for next episode. Let's do, and then let's do something light. I mean, I'm not going to say you need to watch a Jumanji movie again, but
let's watch Weekend at Bernie's Part 2.
So many Weekend at Bernie's jokes flying around the internets these days. I'm leaving it there. I'm just leaving it there. We'll talk about The Frame next time, and then we'll have an idea of when we're doing live streams, and we'll answer questions and start talking about some more fun stuff and things that we've missed, like what Jalen was mentioning last episode about maybe tackling the Star Wars movies. I need to revisit Rise of Skywalker again. Some people will say that's torture. Why would you do that to yourself? I'm just kind of curious if the issues I have are still there, or the problems I don't have. Yeah, you'll see what we think. If you want to reach out to us, please do so. If you want to check back episodes, you can catch them at ScreenGeeks.com. You can find us all over the social media sphere, whether it's Twitter.com/ I'll just list all these off, and it's /ScreenGeeks. So we got Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch.tv. And then for our YouTube channel, if you want to see me fail horrifically at trying to do a game live stream playing Battlefield Warzone, you can hit ScreenGeeks.youtube.com. No, that's supposed to be youtube.screengeeks.com. Dave screwed up. We're back to the show, folks. If you want to shoot us an email, you can to podcast, Barry or Dave at ScreenGeeks.com. If you want to leave us a voicemail, I've got a Google Voice number set up. That number is 970-315-2048. If I answer it, just be like, dude, I want to leave you a voicemail. And then I'll hang up and ignore you. I'll try not to answer the line. Thanks to Five Iron Frenzy for giving us our intro and outro music. They're a fantastic band. I mean, they're the worst band of all time. I'm not getting ready to do an interview with one of the band members who produced a documentary about ska pretty soon. We're going to have some fun stuff coming up. I'll throw this out there. We're looking at possibly doing on Twitch.tv. There is a function called, it's essentially like the Netflix watch party, except it's all based on Twitch. So if you have Amazon Prime, I start the watch party for whatever movie it is that we're going to watch. And the caveat behind that is, if we do it, we want to do it with filmmakers who we know and have relationships with, to then afterward live stream a Q&A/interview. So if you're interested in that, let us know. They won't be the biggest movies ever, but they are movies that we genuinely enjoy. We're working on getting some more guests on just because it's fun. We're having fun, but it's fun to bring in some old friends, and we'll see what happens from there. Barry, what have you got going? Where can people find you on the internet?
On the internet, webbies. Let's see. If you go to MauiTime.com, I have a column called Barry Streaming Cinema. It's about all the films that are basically on Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus that are good. So the stuff that's a little under the surface, the movies that you may have missed the first time. My week, this week, I'm talking about Cinema Paradiso, but I did do an article on the Straight Story a couple weeks ago, so please look for that. The catalog of all my movies are on Rotten Tomatoes. What else? And for Hollywood and Toto, our friend Christian Toto, who's a really great Denver area film critic, he has a site called Hollywood and Toto, and I do a lot of movie reviews for his site as well.
Fantastic. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. I'm having fun doing this again. Are you having fun?
Oh, I'm having a great time, buddy. This is great.
This is a blast. Yeah, it's fun to just sit down for a few hours and just talk about movies with people, and it's a good time. So, until next week, this is Dave.
This is Barry.
Take care.